Hello, and welcome back to Your Inner Child Matters. Our journey today is set to be both enlightening and transformative as we explore the wisdom of the remarkable Dr. Gabor Maté. Prepare for an in-depth exploration of how your self-relationship influences your health and healing. Are you ready to discover the connections? Let's begin this journey together.
When my son was 6 months, he had a hypocalcemic convulsion. And as somebody who used to be, I shall say now, as someone who used to be a perfectionist, I felt I'd let my son down. I felt that I had been a substandard parent and, modern medicine saved his life, but it did nothing to help me understand what might have the consequences of being low in vitamin D for 6 months, for the development of his immune system and all the other functions that this vitamin, or I should say hormone, does in the body. This is where when we make things too binary, it gets really confusing and it keeps us locked. So we left the hospital after 5 days with, them saying, he's fine now, he can go. And I was thinking, well, what about everything else? Is this it? I made myself a vow as we were walking out of the hospital. I made myself a vow. I'm going to get my son back to full health as if this had never happened. And I became obsessed. I would read, I would study nutrition, the gut microbiome, the immune system, 4 or 5 hours a day, obsessed with one goal, to get him back to full health. And, he is, as of last week, he's 12. He's a thriving, happy, healthy 12-year-old boy. But I realized for the first, 5, 6 years of me being a father, I was consumed by guilt. I thought I'd let him down, and that would drive everything I really would encourage him to do. And I realized after a while, he doesn't need your guilt.
Exactly.
He doesn't need your guilt. He just wants a present dad. Nobody else. My wife didn't think I was to blame. The medical profession didn't think I was to blame. It's a self-created story in my head.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Well, so I so resonate with that. But first of all, let me just say something. You say you felt you'd let him down. You felt you didn't help him. Those aren't feelings. Those are beliefs.
Yeah.
You believe them. Now, if you like the feeling, it's probably shame.
Oh, yeah.
And guilt. And then if I asked you, shame and guilt, is that the first time when you felt them? You would say no. They probably go back a long, long way. In other words, your son had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And my kids have given me that message so much. Leave off with your guilt already.
Yeah.
Leave off with your mea culpas already. They say, we don't want to be seen as your mistakes.
Yeah.
We don't want to be seen as your failure. We're people.
That's a great point.
And so that you're doing nobody any favors when you look at your children through the eyes of your own guilt, which has nothing to do with them anyway.
Yeah, completely. And I've noticed as I've done the work through IFS, through all kinds of different modalities, as I've let go of that. And I think I mostly have. I'm sure it comes up now and again at certain times. And then it's another self-awareness piece of, oh, God, I thought I was over that. That's coming up again. What is that part trying to say?
Well, it's interesting because I know that amongst your core values, I think you talk about integrity, compassion, and curiosity. So I teach a course called Compassionate Inquiry.
Yeah.
In fact, Dick Schwartz and I did a program together recently where we talked about the differences and similarities between his approach and mine, and there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, for sure.
And so if you took the same dynamic of you and your son and your guilt, if you applied some compassionate inquiry to it, what would you find out? You would find out that you did nothing wrong. You'd find out that the guilt and the shame that you're experiencing had nothing to do with your son. They predated his birth by a couple of decades at least.
Yeah.
And that you do yourself and him no favor by projecting it onto him.
Yeah.
So again, when it comes back to parents, it's so important that you be compassionate to yourselves.
Yeah.
And if you make mistakes, rather than make yourself wrong for it, inquire. Well, why did I do that? If you want to use the IFS model, what part of me did that? What part of me hit my kid? Was so angry? Or if you want to use compassionate inquiry, what need of mine was not being met there?
Yeah.
That led to that outrage on my part. Again, this is not to take anybody off the hook or to excuse any kind of behavior, but if we want to grow, we have to understand. And if we don't take a stance of compassionate curiosity towards ourselves. If you said to yourself, "Why did I do this?" That's not a question. That's a statement full of judgment. But if you said to yourself, I wonder why I did that.
Yeah.
That's the question.
Boom. Yeah. Having let go of that guilt,
Yeah.
or much of it, or certainly I hope most of it,
Yeah.
there's a more authentic interaction between us now.
Yeah. You and your son, you mean?
Yeah, my son and I.
Of course,
and
yeah.
It's really beautiful. And I think, for me, this speaks to the incredible power in your work. Through all your work, but speaking about this latest book, I think one of the most powerful things it gives people is awareness. Because everyone wants to jump from awareness to what do I do now? And I think we underestimate just how powerful that first step is.
Yeah.
Just to be, that's why I behaved like that. Oh, I had no idea. You know, I guess we're blind until we're not. We're unaware until we're not. And then we can't unsee what we see.
Exactly.
And I really feel your work beautifully helps people see patterns in their life that they weren't previously aware of. And there are multiple ways that they can then go and move forward through that. But I think that's very, very powerful. In terms of patterns, you write in this book about personality.
Yeah.
And there's a very powerful section where you talk about the association between certain personality types and disease. And in particular, I like that section where you mentioned William Osler, and he was talking about the type of people who he observed getting angina.
Yeah.
And you contrasted that with this kind of type C personality, which is associated with all kinds of other chronic conditions. I wonder if you could speak to those things a little bit.
Sure. So again, these are the things that nobody teaches you in medical school. But as I advanced in my experience in family practice and also did 7 years of palliative care work, I began to notice that who developed chronic illness and who didn't wasn't accidental. That the people that develop chronic illness, by that I mean autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, scleroderma, lupus, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, inflammatory bowel disease, chronic asthma, et cetera, these people have certain personality patterns that I kept noticing over and over and again. And especially in palliative care, when people are dying of chronic illness, often malignancy, I would see these patterns. And what were they? So there were automatic concern for the emotional needs of others while suppressing your own. Exemplified by a woman who, it's a true story, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Her husband's first wife died of breast cancer. Another doctor tells her she's got it. And her first response is, "But I'm worried about my husband. How will I support him?" Now, she's the one that's going to have to go through chemotherapy, radiation, and possibly surgery or whatever. How will I support my husband? So this automatic concern for the emotional needs of others while ignoring your own. That's a salient characteristic of people who develop chronic illness. Secondly, a rigid identification with duty, role, and responsibility. Is in the case of when I was writing the book, and I was rigidly identified with the book, and my blood pressure was going up.
Yeah.
You know, because I wasn't thinking of myself, you know. Number 3, repression of healthy anger. That's a major one. Healthy anger is one of my healing principles, and it's essential. Healthy anger is simply a boundary defense that says, no, you're in my space, get out. That's what healthy anger is. It does its job, it's gone. But without that boundary defense, you get trampled on all the time. And these really so-called really nice people who never get angry, they're the ones who develop malignancy and autoimmune disease. And the 4th characteristic is 2 fatal beliefs. And I say fatal beliefs, potentially fatal. One is that you're responsible for what other people feel, and the other is that you must never disappoint anybody. Now, how these traits predispose, I don't say they cause the disease. I don't deal in causes. It's simplistic to talk about single causes. But they contribute to the onset significantly. And people with chronic illness invariably have them.
Yeah.
I never find otherwise. These are not, nobody's born with these traits. I mean, have you ever met a one-day-old baby that doesn't know how to say no? Try and feed them something they don't want to eat, you know? These are personality traits that we develop to fit in with our environment.
Yeah.
And if their environment is, if your parents are alcoholics, you're going to end up as a caretaker. As a 4 or 5-year-old, you're going to be an emotional caretaker by suppressing your own needs. Now, that's going to show up in illness of mind or body later on in life. And for all kinds of physiological reasons, mostly because it invites all kinds of stress. You're creating all kinds of stress for yourself, which then has all kinds of physiological impacts. So these character traits are in contrast with but they're not who the person really is.
It's who they became.
It's who they became as an adaptation to their environment. Then the body says no. The body rebels and says, no, this is not good for you. But the question is, are people going to learn from their disease or not? And a lot of people, whether through help or whether through some intuition or some grace, if they learn to look at their diseases not just as something to get rid of, but also as a teacher of where in my life was I not being myself. Now, I don't recommend disease as a way of learning, and I'm not saying people shouldn't do whatever they can to get treatment and to heal in other ways, but at the same time, if they open that inquiry of what is the disease here to teach me about me, they're going to find that these patterns were present and they don't need to be.
Yeah.
Because they're no longer the children that are constrained to be that way.
It's not either or. It's not either it's emotional or it's physical.
No, it's not.
These things are complex. And, you know, disease as a teacher, wow. I mean, I completely agree with you. That is something that many people may find triggering.
Yeah.
The medical profession, certainly, in my experience of it, the Western medical profession doesn't really acknowledge that side of things. Disease is that discrete entity. Now you have it. We've got the proof. Now we need to treat it.
Yeah.
Without an understanding, you know, it's the biomedical model, not the social model, right?
Spiritual.
Spiritual.
That ends our wonderful video with the remarkable Dr. Gabor Maté. We hope you've been inspired to consider the profound impact of your self-relationship on your health and healing path. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe to Your Inner Child Matters for more inspiring content. Remember that your inner child deserves love, compassion, and healing. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you in the next enlightening video.